Cheers. It's my first drink of the night, guys. I'll tell you what. It's Thursday night. Chap's Fantasy Chat. 1 week from baseball. How quickly this has flown by, right? I remember, the first baseball episode of the year that I did, and I'm like, what the heck am I going to talk about? Well, lots happened since then. We've talked about most of it. But tonight, we're going to talk about my favorite subject. And, it's a subject to me. I got to thank my buddy, Dave Craig, for getting me into this. Prospects, I was very much not following that genre of fantasy baseball at all until Dave, brought this idea of starting a rookie draft. And it's really kind of taken off since then. It's become a big deal. And, I think it's going to keep growing. I, for one, am super excited. As you all well know, I'm here in Indianapolis. And, the Indians are here, the Pirates AAA team. I'm excited they're going to have minor league baseball this year. I didn't get to see a game last year at all. I usually go to, between 5 and 10 AAA games. They're great because you can go and you sit in the front row for like $10. You could talk to the players. I always like to just, let them decide how I treat them. I remember, joking around with Austin Riley one day. And, he almost hit 3 out of the park. I tell this all the time. I know he almost hit 3 out of the park off of Tyler Glass now. But he just pulled the first ball down the left field line. Then he hit a double off the wall. Then the next time, so he came up the next time and I'm like, hey, you just pulled your shoulder. Yeah, just having a good time, right? Pulled your shoulder on that where you had a homer, right? Well, then he went up and hit a homer. Anyway, my point being, minor league baseball is great. Incorporating prospects into your draft, whether it be, via a minor league system that you do organically, or like a Fantrax, you could put minor league people. You can make minor league spots. So this week I'm going to break it down into a 2-section bit. This week we're going to talk about players that will impact this year. The next week we're going to talk more about guys that can kind of set you apart from your competition, because there'll be guys that are trending upwards big time, and a lot of people, they know the top 100 pretty well, but they just know the names. They haven't seen a lot of the skill sets and the abilities and the bat to ball skills and stuff like that. I've seen a lot of that, because I really do like watching the prospects and see how they do. Looks a little different tonight, I know. I'm a bachelor tonight. My wife, Jamila, is so great. She always, accommodates whatever I'm doing with this and supports me. I really do appreciate that. But I thought I'd try this out here, and definitely, I got 3 dogs, so it's the guys' night. So I'm just kind of monitoring everybody out here. If I have to step away for a second, or if you hear a dog barking in the background, guys' night. So, Chap's Fantasy Chat, Thursday nights at 8. Come back at 10. RC and I are going to be talking not just baseball. We're going to talk some baseball, but we're going to talk about some March Madness stuff. We're going to talk about some football. We've put that away for a couple weeks with the tournament stuff going on, but we decided that we'd pick that back up. Free agency's pretty much come and gone. There's a few guys still out there, so we'll talk about theories and stuff with that. I will say to you that RC's a Tornado Alley down there in the Chattanooga area. He's been without power and with power and all that good stuff. So, our mindset at OA is, if we can be there, we will. You get sick, you have severe weather, you don't make it. But we'll be here week in and week out, and we'll talk about all the fun stuff, all the stuff that kind of, flows over. Might not be the things that a lot of people are talking about on the mainstream media, and that's kind of like what we pride ourselves on doing. So, without further ado, I do want to jump in because again, there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent every year, right? And it used to be there's like one or two guys that you keep your eye on. Now, there could be upwards of 20 to 30 guys that impact big time this year in the major leagues. And everybody wants to have that next big guy, right? That's the allure. That's the shiny new toy in the corner. So we'll talk about that. If you're going to go and spend draft capital on one of these prospects, you want to make sure that it's the right one. And it's tough because some of these guys look really good, and then they slip. Then it doesn't come to fruition. I always talk about Greg Bird, Byron Buxton, all these guys, that were supposed to be great players, have fallen short. Whereas, other guys, Fernando Tatis and so, a bunch of other guys haven't. They've come up and been very successful. Eloy Jimenez, that's a shame. It really is. What's going on there? So ruptured pectoral tendon is going to miss 5 to 6 months. I think before we jump into this, and there's some direct correlation here, obviously. Before we jump into this, I think it's something that we really need to at least mention, that we're going to be missing one of the best young stars in the game basically all season. So 5 months from now, best case scenario, you're looking at August, and that's just coming back. That's before rehab, getting up the pace, yada, yada, yada. You're not going to see much Eloy Jimenez this year, unfortunately. Some other injuries. I don't want to go too in depth to it, but there are some that I kind of wanted to talk about. Kirby Yates is the other really big one. Tommy John surgery opens up the door. Jordan Romano obviously is the heir apparent. He'll get the first chance, but there's a prospect next week that I'll talk about a little bit that I think might fit that role pretty well. It's going to take a bit of a succession to get to him, but I feel like Alec Manoah, I'll spill the beans, former Mountaineer, first-round pick for the Blue Jays, big guy. I really think like he could fit as a closer there for this year because, he has that kind of stuff. Hunter Harvey, oblique strain, out indefinitely, was set to be pitching in the back end of that bullpen, Baltimore, I think. I don't have it written down. I apologize. Shugo Akiyama's got a hamstring, looking like he's going to be late April before he comes up. Interesting little position battle there going on for his playing time. Carlos Carrasco, hamstring, mid-May. Brandon McKay out indefinitely with a shoulder. Speaking of prospects, Josh Chung, Minmei with the foot. That's unfortunate. That's a guy that I might well be talking about next week. I might still talk about him, but he was due to maybe not break camp with the Rangers, but be up pretty quickly. And that doesn't appear like that's going to be the case now because he hasn't been able to get the reps. And that's big for these young guys. Texas Tech product, hometown kid, if you will, they really want him to do well in Texas, and I think he will. Tatis, Fernando Tatis, the big one. Shoulder discomfort, non-throwing shoulder. He was removed from the game. Reports came out today that it's not a big deal. It's not a scare. It was just a precaution. He should be okay to get back. I think they said this weekend. So not clearly not as devastating as Eloy Jimenez was, right? But a scare nonetheless. Sonny Gray, back spasms. He's a week behind schedule. And George Springer has a grade 2 oblique strain. That's a tough break for the Blue Jays. So we'll see how that goes. They certainly can plug and play people in there, but they didn't go out and spend a bunch of money to have Springer not produce. It's unfortunate. Still really talented guys. Don't make no mistake. All right. Cleaned up. Got through the priorities there. I want to talk about what really gets me going, what I'm really excited about, and that's these prospects. Again, I'm going to break this down. We're going to do the help you later this year, next year type guys next week. This week, I want to do the guys that are going to be in the mix this year. Some of these guys will be fantasy impact. Most of these guys will be fantasy impacts almost immediately. Okay. Like I said, it used to be a couple of players. Now, more and more players are getting the opportunity, especially post-COVID era where teams weren't allowed to have fans in the stands. I imagine that a lot of teams will be looking to get these guys and their cheap contracts into the game sooner rather than later. But before we get into some of those guys who have, not yet earned their stripes, if you will, I want to talk about these guys. These first couple guys they're prospects in name only. They actually got playing time last year. They were able to come up and show their worth. I think most people know who I'm talking about. The first guy I want to talk about is Cabrian Hayes, Charlie Hayes' son, Pittsburgh Pirate product. Seen him a ton of times over here in Indy, and it's always something that you kind of wear as a badge of honor when you get. Hey, Durf, what's up? Thanks, buddy. Good to see you, bud. I'm going to talk positively about your Pirates, and you're sitting here talking. Good job, bud. Okay. Anyway, Kebrian Hayes, he's certainly the keystone of that team moving forward. That they're trying to get him signed to a long-term deal. Just kind of, I think that's big for the Pirates to kind of signify to the rest of the major leagues that this isn't your daddy's Pirates. This team wants to compete. There's new ownership, there's new leadership, there's new people running this Pirate, and they're doing a good job. Sherrington's doing a great job. You look at what he's got going down on the lower minors, and it really is impressive. Some of these guys, Nick Gonzalez hit his first home run of the preseason. Day before yesterday, looks really good. He'll probably be a second baseman. You got O'Neal Cruz. You got a whole bunch of these players. There's two, Priester and Malone. The Pirates farm system, guys. People are sleeping on them. And I'm getting ahead of myself. If you're in a league where you have a deeper farm system, you really need Quinn Priester is one of those guys that could be a top 10 prospect this time next year, Durf. Quinn Priester. And, I think the Pirates are going to be better than people think. Kevin Newman's killing the ball. He's a year removed from being 3-0 whatever. Adam Frazier looks like a stud. I can't remember. Oh, Ian Anderson. I'm watching him yesterday. Took him deep on a high fastball that he turned around on him like that. So it's one of those things where I feel like everybody wants to ha-ha the Pirates. I think they're going to be better than people think this year. Now, the pitching stinks. Although Brewbreaker looked pretty good when I saw him the other day, I don't think he's going to get the job done long term. I'm getting off topic, but I just want to put that out there. We'll do some bold predictions next week, but I feel like the Pirates are a little bit underrated this year. So back to Cabrian Hayes, 24 years old. The Pirates are notorious in the past about taking their time with prospects and making sure. I've seen Cabrian over here a handful of times. He was not ready up until last year. He would show flashes of greatness, and then he would disappear for like a month. So it's one of those things where he's ready. The thing that people don't realize about Cabrian Hayes, he is so refined as a young player that he understands the strike zone. He's not going to swing at bad pitches, and he's going to he's going to hit the ball where you give it to him. So for me, he's going to have to grow into his power a little bit. But I think in this day and age, with pitchers being what they are, I feel like he still has 20 in him this year, with a ceiling of 25 to 30 in the future. In his prime, I look for Cabrian Hayes to be a 3,300, 100 guy, especially, like I said, when it helped, or when you start bringing up the Nick Gonzalez's and the O'Neill Cruzes of the world to put people around him. Yes, Kevin Newman's good. I mean that. I think Kevin Newman's good. Adam Frazier's a good player, but it's just going to be a little bit different when you start bringing these first-round picks up. So Cabrian Hayes is one of those guys, again, the 300 batting average is nice. I think he gets that this year. I think 20 is probably a little bit more realistic for him as far as home runs go this year. But I think in the very near future, you're looking at 25, maybe even 30, as he understands launch angle and some of the, the analytics of the game that it takes time to master, right? I think that's he's something he's going to grow into. But right now he's a doubles hitter. He's hitting at the top of that lineup. I know they're not that good on paper, but I really do believe that, he's going to be a spark plug for that offense in a lot of ways this year. I feel like the OBP thing is something that most people aren't going to look at. But he's going to be on base a lot. He knows how to work a walk. He's still young enough where he can steal a base if he needs to. And it's one of those things where I just feel like he's going to be – it's a confidence thing, right? And the Pirates last year didn't have that. I feel like this guy's kind of a spark plug at the top of that lineup. He's going to get on base. He's going to make things happen. Old school style baseball, doubles, taking the base, yada, yada. Prediction. I'm looking at 285, and I think that's a floor for him. 390 OBP, 19 homers, 77 runs, 65 RBIs, 7 stolen bases. I predict Kebrian Hayes is your Rookie of the Year in the National League. Alec Bond is the other guy. And there's a lot of similarities. Yeah, no, I know. Charlie Hayes was he played for the Yankees, and he played for a bunch of teams, right? Good point. He's a legacy. That's, I guess, the takeaway from that. His dad played, so he knows kind of what it takes to stick around. Alec Bond, 24 years old. So ADPs, let's talk about that real quick. ADP for Hayes is 134. ADP for Bond is 106. So you're getting Hayes at almost 3-round difference, which is a good thing. To me, the difference between Baum and Hayes is 2 things. They're both excellent, first off. I think you're going to suffer a little bit. I don't think the 330, whatever it was last year, is repeatable with Baum. I think you're looking more at a 280, 290 type guy. The power is legitimate. This guy's got a 40 power potential in his prime. I think he's clearly more powerful than Hayes is. But because Hayes gets on base more, because Hayes knows how to work a count, I think he's going to year in and year out carry a higher average, higher OBP, and be more valuable across the board. The other thing about Baum, he's an offense-first profile. He struggled at third base last year. And while he worked at it the offseason, early indicators are Girardi said he looks like a much improved defensive. I think that was what he said. A much improved defensive player at third base. There are still concerns there. It is a long season. And the main concern is I feel like the Phillies don't want to move Rhys Hoskins off of first base. He showed he can't play anywhere else. He's not an outfielder. So if Baum has to move to first base because of defense, that's a problem because then you're going to have to fill that third base spot, and Hoskins is going to have to find a place to play. I don't think that happens this year, so I don't want to get too much into that, but it is something to think about. Bomb's bat certainly does fit that profile better of a first baseman. Not that there's much different in this day and age as far as fantasy goes, but there is still a little bit of difference. The lower average is more acceptable at first. More power is albeit a little bit, third base is a lot of power these days. More attractive at first base. So, worst case scenario, he shifts back and forth. But again, that squeezes Rhys Hoskins quite a bit. I'm sure the Phillies don't want to do that. It's clutch for the Phillies down the stretch last year. He basically kept them in the playoff race with his clutch hitting. And he's hit fourth basically all spring. This is a good thing. I like both of these players, but I think ultimately the OBP, the defense at third base, separates Hayes just a bit from Vaughn. I'm buying both of these players. These guys are both Rookie of the Year candidates in the National League, and they'll both be a big part of their team's success, not failure this year. Both of these guys are going to be the keystone for their teams for the next decade. And even if you're in a shallow keeper league, both of these guys should be targets. I'm not having such a good feel on pitching. And I like to do this, right? So Baum versus Hayes. I prefer Hayes. I want to talk about Howard versus Mize. It's interesting. They're both 24 years old. They both got a ton of potential. Mize, first overall draft pick out of Auburn. Everybody's top 5 pipeline 100 darling 2 years ago. Howard hasn't pitched above high A. 6 starts above high A in his career prior to last year's 8. So he's got 14 total starts above high A. Struggled a little bit last year. But who turns it around? And why? I feel like if you're looking early on in the season, Howard's your better option. But I don't think Howard stays the whole year. I just don't think he has the innings to pitch the entire year. Nor does Mize. Mize is competing for a spot as well. I would be hard-pressed to believe that he doesn't start the year in the major leagues. But there's concerns with both of these guys. I'm not sold on either one of them long term. Well, long term I am sold on both of these guys. I do think they'll develop into the pitchers that people think they will be. But there's some danger in jumping guys multiple levels or giving guys extended periods of time at the major leagues when they're not ready. It can cause serious damage. So I think both of these clubs need to be real careful in protecting their pitching prospects. And it's going to be tough for both of these teams to protect these guys. For Howard, Philly's going to compete this year. And while they can protect him a little bit, they're still going to want to get him into big games and pitching big innings because they trust his stuff. I think the Matt Moore signing for the Phillies was sneaky good because I think that hides Spencer Howard a little better. Casey Mize, on the other hand, isn't hiding from anybody. His ability is clear. He's got 3+ pitches. Nick Anderson has a partial tear of his elbow ligament, likely to be out past the All-Star break. Mark Thompson, TB times raise. Anyway. Jeez. Detroit's got 3 first-round pitchers that they can fall back on if Mize struggles. Tariq Skubal, Matt Manning, and of course Mize. All have the potential to be aces. And I think that plays into Mize's hands a little bit. As they'll be able to spot start those guys. Play who's hot, if you will. Last year, 0-3, 6.96 ERA, 1.48 WHIP, 7 starts. I'm having a hard time with the fact that Casey Mize might get sent down to the minors. But I understand it because people that aren't prospect savvy don't understand how much talent is in that system. Detroit's going to be a good team this year. Those 3 aces alone are a bedrock to any team. You throw in Spencer Torkelson. You throw in Riley Green. Austin Riley Green, and Austin Martin. I always get those guys mixed up for some reason. Riley Green, I think he was a 5th overall pick 2 years ago. Almost broke camp with Detroit last year. He's not had a great spring training, but people are kind of sleeping on him a little bit. I look for him to get time in the upper minors early on in the year and get some playing time after the All-Star break. Talk about him next week. Point being, I'm feeling like Detroit's going to have, one, the ability with the talent around him to protect him and to keep his innings down. 2, the incentive to keep his innings down because he's the future. And then 3, knowing they're going to be competing soon. I feel like you just have to let him set his course, work his inning load up, and get him to the point where he can compete next year at full ability. Whether that's 120 innings, I don't know what it is, right? But, just kind of try and get his arm stretched out to where he's able to next year give you what he's capable of. So this is going to be a litmus test for Mize. I think he struggles early, but I think he finds his groove. He surges after the All-Star break. I think you're looking at about a 500 average. I put down 8-6. I think you're looking at about a 4.2 ERA and a 1.3 WHIP. I think that both of those numbers go in a positive direction after the All-Star break. I think they inflate a little bit. Of the 2, I'm highly suggesting going Mize over Howard, although I feel like both of those can be good later round values. I don't have their ADP, of course. You're having to probably draft them a little higher in most leagues than you want to. The pitcher that I do want to invest in, and I think it's important to differentiate here. Randall, it's your boy. Ian Anderson. 22 years old, guys. He was extremely hard for hitters to barrel up last year. They could not hit this kid. And watching him yesterday, I can see why. He locates well. Hey, Dave, what's up, buddy? Thanks for coming by. He locates the ball well. He's effective with his pitches. His pitches have movement. It really is fun watching him pitch. He looks like a 10-year vet out there. And, he really looked good again yesterday. I look for him. I look for him to continue that dominance and kind of become the ace of that Braves lineup this year, which I know is saying a lot, right? They got Max Fried. They got Soraka. There's a lot of talent there, right? But those other guys don't have the stuff that Anderson has. He was in the 99th percentile, according to Baseball Savants, in barrel percentage last year. I'll say that again. That's really hard to do, especially for a 22-year-old rookie. He was in the 99th percentile in barrel rate last year among all major leaguers. 1.2% barrel rate last year for Ian Anderson. He's already stretched out. He threw 75 pitches yesterday. He looks like he can handle a heavy workload. But again, a lot like Detroit, Atlanta can hide him a little bit if they need to give him a rest during the middle of the year. Bryce Wilson looks phenomenal. Kyle Wright, they just sent down to the minors. Kyle Muller, they have. So I really think Ian Anderson is the pitcher to own of this year's crop. I'm looking at about a 12-4 record for him. Like I said, I do believe he'll be rested for a few starts just out of precaution in his youth. 12-4, I look at about a 3.11 ERA and a 1.19 WHIP. Again, he allowed one barreled ball to 81 major league batters last year as a 22-year-old kid. That many. One. I want to talk about next. Like I said, it's unfortunate about Eloy Jimenez. Budding star, really looking like he was coming into his own, even more so than he's already been. Looks like he's out 5 to 6 months. Torn pectoral, whatever. The beneficiary of that is Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn, to me, his draft stock skyrocketed this afternoon. When they announced that he would be starting in left field tomorrow for the White Sox. Skyrocketed. Because all the other indicators are so positive for him. If he didn't make the big league roster out of camp, you knew he was going to be up in a couple weeks. But now I don't see a scenario where he doesn't break camp with the big league club. I love this. This is so fun. In fantasy baseball, great guys. I mean, this is a great time of year. You got March Madness, of course. You got, the football off season's going on, a bunch of movement. You get ready for the draft. Getting ready, drafting for fantasy baseball is my favorite thing to do. And it's not close. Andrew Vaughn, to me, is a special player. I just said that. I announced it on air, David. That sucks. He's my closer in multiple leagues. Shucks. Anyway, Andrew Vaughn will probably be multi-position eligible. I'd imagine he'll carry over first base eligibility, even though he's never played first base in the major leagues. Yeah, I know. I imagine he'll be an outfield eligible player relatively quickly. I look for him to get a predominant amount of those at bats. And more importantly, he gets Eloy's spot in that lineup. That's the big takeaway there. I watched him the other day, and this kid he's not as tall as I thought he was. He's got this. It's a lot like Harvey Baez, where he kind of corks up. But he has a violent swing, and this is one of those guys. So Tony La Russa's been around a lot of good hitters. Quotes from Tony La Russa about 22-year-old Andrew Vaughn. He's an advanced hitter for this point in his career. I know he has never played above whatever, but boy, he takes great at bats, makes great adjustments. He's got all the qualities. He's still in serious. This was a couple days. He's still in serious competition for a spot on this team. This is how Tony La Russa speaks of this guy. I wrote down here. I gotta say, I wish my wife had such an affinity for me as Tony La Russa does for Andrew Vaughn. I love my wife. She's great. More La Russa quotes. He does things that the good hitters do. He can handle different pitches. He never gives them away in a bat, and he uses the whole field. Quote, he's got thump. This guy's stock has skyrocketed more than anybody else in the major leagues today. There's no question he makes the big league team. There's no question he's sitting in the middle of that lineup. This directly affects Eloy Jimenez's injury directly affects Andrew Vaughn's stock value. I wrote his old prediction down. I wrote an update to it. I wrote 260 as his average before. I upped it to 275. I think it goes up because I think the more at-bats he sees, the more disciplined of a hitter he becomes, the more he understands what big league pitching is trying to do to him, the more his average goes up. 17 to 27 home runs. This is purely due to playing time. He's earned a spot on the big league team now. 10 plus in home runs from this move. 30 runs to 62 runs. This could go even higher, especially if he's hitting on the front end of that lineup. I'd imagine he probably hits fifth or sixth. But who knows? He could hit second or third. I don't know. So I gave him a 32-run boost. That was a modest adjustment. 34 RBI to 74 RBI. Plus 40 runs batted in. The most important projection, 30 games to almost 100. 90 games out of Andrew Vaughn. That's a big bump. And we need to be paying attention to that. Because it's significant. It's significant. The White Sox are going to be a great team. He's going to be a big part of that lineup. Buy Andrew Vaughn and hold on to him. Chap's Fantasy Chat, Thursday nights at 8. Come back at 10. Randall and I are going to be talking a whole bunch of sports. The Gauntlet. We're going to talk some more baseball. We're going to talk about fantasy draft preparation. We're going to talk more about prospects and how the impact of prospects. We're going to talk about the brackets. We're going to talk about, a little bit different perspective of the brackets, but we're going to talk about who advances next week, why the teams that are there, and what some of the consequences are of what's happened so far. And of course, we're going to talk about football too. NFL free agency's basically come and gone. A lot of names assigned with different places. A lot of movement this offseason. We'll wrap that up, give our take on that as we move into draft season. And that'll be on us in the next month and a half, I think it is. So it's important to kind of keep wraps on it, just kind of do a check-in on it and discuss, the important goings on and kind of break down some strategy and what some teams are doing. So make sure to come back at 10. The Other Angle, Chappie and RC. iLogic Media is the home. That's where you find us. Chappie's Fantasy Sports Group on Facebook, at Chap's Fantasy Chat on Twitter. Again, iLogic Media, Draft for Upside. River City Media as well. Thank you. So I want to wrap this up. I got a couple more guys I want to talk about. Look, I'm not going to talk about Wander Franco this week. I'm not going to talk about Bobby Witt this week. They might break camp with the team. They might not. They're definitely going to be impacts, but I feel like they belong in this next group still, even if just for a little bit. All of these guys I've mentioned so far are going to be on the team basically all year, or at least until they're told that they need some work, right? Especially with the first two pitchers. I want to talk about. I'm going to skip Sixto Sanchez. I'll say this: 22 years old, 96.6 miles per hour on a sinker, averaging 98.5 miles per hour on his four-seam fastball last year. This guy reminds me a lot of Dustin May. He needs to learn how to get a little bit of movement on his pitches, and then he'll be dominant. I like what Sixto Sanchez brings to the table long term. I worry about his consistency a bit this year. I do want to talk about. I got two outfielders that I think are really interesting, and I want to compare them a little bit. Randy Arozarena and Dylan Carlson. These two guys, to me, are similar, but there's a lot of contrast there as well, right? Ironically, they both come up through the Cardinals farm system. Arozarena is everybody's sweetheart last year in the playoffs, right? He hit 10 homers and drove in 14 and 20 games in the LCS, was named the MVP. He hit 281 during the season, and he hit 376 during the playoffs. Lightning quick hand speed, significant power, 93rd percentile in sprint speed. I did not know that. It hasn't necessarily shown on the base paths yet. And some players don't steal bases. They just don't like to run. That could be a game changer for Arozarena. We haven't seen it yet, so I won't project it. But it's just a little something to monitor, right? Put it like this: if I see Arozarena start to steal bases, I'm going to go out and try and trade him, and I'm going to give a player that's pretty significant to get him. Because players that have that true 5-tool profile, they're few and far between. And if he steals bases, he's definitely that. I think you see a little bit of negative regression this year with Arozarena. I still think he's capable. I still think he's a quality outfielder. But I think people that draft him might expect a little bit more than what he gives you. Whereas Dylan Carlson, 22 years old, hasn't quite shown us yet, right? I mean, he was supposed to be the second coming. Everybody was on him. He's a big waiver wire pickup last year. It was pretty early on, but never really got into his groove, and that's tough. Hit 200, 3 homers, and 110 at bats. This is complicated. Harrison Bader's injured. So, whereas Carlson, who's probably a natural right fielder, could have just sat out there and relied on, let's be honest, if not the best defensive center fielder, he's in the top 3 in the majors, to get to as much as he can. Now, he might be asked to play center for the next month and a half. And he could do it. He's good enough. He could play center field. But I think that's an issue, especially for a young player, especially for a 22-year-old, to ask him to not only produce the plate, but play a position that's not his best, I guess, it could impact his offensive game. I don't think it does, at least not long term. It might early on in the year. I'll say this, though. I like what the Cardinals are doing with him in spring. So they're flipping and flopping him. He's spent a lot of time in the 2-hole. But he's also been hitting 6, 7, 8. A lot of 7. 7's not bad. But I think it's an indicator. He's hit more in the 2-hole as spring has progressed as well. So I think it's an indicator that the Cardinals, and this is before the Bader injury as well. Not that Bader's an offensive juggernaut. He's certainly not. But it speaks to the Cardinals' confidence in what he's doing, what he's showing, his work ethic, his abilities. that they're putting Carlson in that position. I don't think they put him there if they didn't think he could be successful there. I like Carlson, especially in the second half of the year. I like him more than Arozarena. And I know that's a little bold, right? But let's be honest. The Cardinals are pretty good at eyeing talent generally. They chose Carlson over Arozarena. That says a lot to me. I do believe that Arozarena continues to be successful. But I think Carlson is a budding superstar in this league with 330, 100 type potential. I don't know about his speed. Maybe 10. I don't know. But I think he contributes in 4 of those 5 categories. And you could see him hitting at the top of that lineup as soon as this year. That's worth an investment to me. Chap's Fantasy Chat, Thursday nights at 8. Draft for Upside, iLogic Media. iTunes, Spotify, StreamYard, Chap's Fantasy Sports Group, River City Media. Thank you to everybody who supports me. Thank you to all my listeners. I appreciate your input. I hope this was informative. Next week, I'm going to talk about that next layer of prospects. Yes, I'm not talking about Witt. I'm not talking about Franco. The only guy that I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit, well, 2 of them, Nick Madrigal and Bobby Dahlbeck. Dahlbeck looks like he's got the first base job lined up, but looking at his the lineups in the spring training, he's splitting time. Marwin Gonzalez is playing a lot of first base, as is Michael Chavez. So there's still some pretty big ifs there for me with Bobby Dahlbeck. He looks like a good ball player. He's hit 308 this spring with 6 homers and 13 RBIs. That's not to be taken lightly. I'm interested in Dahlbeck. I'm not as interested in Madrigal. I just feel like he doesn't give you anything outside of average. I saw someone predict he steals 30 bases this year. Good luck getting there. He's got hamstring issues. I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast. Hamstring, if you're a base stealer, I don't think he is a base stealer, first off. But if he has 30 stolen base potential, he's got hamstring issues going into April, he's not running. So I'm not a big fan of Madrigal. Long term I am, but definitely not this year. So again, next week I want to talk about a lot of really good players. Josh Chung, Riley Green, Alec Manoah, and, Jonathan India, David, Jared Kelenic, Nick Lodolo, Mackenzie Gore. These are all Josiah Gray, CJ Abrams. There's a ton of that next level talent, and that's really where we get into the fun, breaking these guys down at a deep level to understand what their ceilings look like and what their timeline looks like. So come back next week. But before that, come back at 10. Talk some college hoops with me and talk some professional football. The one thing that I didn't really get into, the impact of these guys if they come up and are successful. We'll talk about some organizational stuff. Talk a little bit about draft strategy. That's 10 o'clock. Same place, right here. OA, the other angle with Chappie and RC, 10 o'clock Thursday nights. Chap's Fantasy Chat, Thursday nights at 8. Thank you, guys. I'm going to go eat some pizza. I'll see you in an hour. Good night.